It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
What's happened with Paulina's experience with her son is we're in a hurry. I need to be efficient. I know that you want to do things your way, but let's turn it into a competition. But it's normal and natural for boys to be competitive, and it's also normal and natural for parents to be saying, hurry up.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Each Tuesday on the Happy Families podcast, we do our best to spend some time responding to listener questions. You can email your questions to podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. Kylie, mum to our 6 kids, me, Dr. Justin Coulson, author of a whole bunch of books about making your family happier, and dad to those same 6 kids. Here is the question that we have. It begins so nicely, Kylie. Hi, Dr. Justin and Kylie. So I'd like to start by saying I'm fully committed to totally binging your podcast at the moment. Went all the way back to episode 1 and have been listening to it all from the beginning. I'm obsessed. Kylie, I don't know that we actually need to even answer this question. Surely after listening to something like 700 episodes, if you're not a parenting expert by now.
No. If she's gone back to number 1, she hasn't even got to me. She hasn't heard the expert.
Hey, it'd be really interesting to go back to those early podcasts of yours when you were just beginning. We should do that and do a replay. Compare then and now. It's been 3 years.
That's scary.
Let's move on with the request from from Pauline, who says, listening to your podcast, I've been more intentional with my family and couldn't help but notice we have unknowingly caused our 4-year-old son to stress. We have had a few issues in the past with emotional regulation, but it has been brought back to our attention by his preschool. He rushes through colouring in and tracing tasks. He's on edge and often ends up being physical with other kids. As I'm reflecting on our parenting with my son, leaving the preschool after a little chat with the teacher at pickup, I'll often say to him, let's see who can get to the gate first. And in that instant, I realised what I'd done. I've instilled in him the need to move along fast at everything. Everything was a competition, rushed or on a time limit. We had used races and time limits to get him through tasks for as long as we can remember. Let's see how fast you can put your shoes on. Who can get to the gate first? Let's time how long it takes to get in the shower and see if we can do it faster than yesterday. Are just a few examples. Or to encourage him to get tasks done without realizing how this could potentially impact him. We would lean on this approach every time we had any pushback from him with the task, innocently trying to make the task fun or appealing to him. When he engages in independent play, he's very focused. He can sit patiently in group times and other activities. There are no concerns about learning difficulties. We do, however, notice tasks and competitive play can become problematic. He rushes to eat so he can be the first one on the play equipment, needs to make everything a race or a competition. He gets this flood of excitement and expresses it physically with his friends and often takes it too far. Paulina finally says, we have implemented some breathing techniques, incorporating squeezing pillows or plush toys when he feels the need to use his body to express excitement. We want him to not hurt his friends. What I would love to know is, have we created an over-competitive child? And if so, how do we undo this habit that we've instilled? Or is this something that requires more support from an occupational therapist, maybe? So, Kylie, Paulina has a question. She has a problem. She's realizing...
This is an SOS.
Yeah, maybe we're pushing a little bit too fast. The first thing that I need to emphasize is that for an issue like this, we do not need, at this point, an occupational therapist. Occupational therapists do really important work. They do great work. But in this instance, with a child who's 4 years old, who's really competitive, using their body a little bit too much and is used to being rushed, this isn't an OT issue. This is something that we can easily resolve in the family.
And I think the next thing is, Mum, stop feeling so guilty.
Yes.
Like you can feel the weight on her shoulders because she feels like she's done the wrong thing.
Yeah.
What she has been intentional about is making things fun. And that's such a beautiful thing to be able to do as a parent. Everything doesn't have to be serious and boring.
I want to come back to that in a sec, but I really just want to sit for a moment on your first point. I think there's a lot of wisdom here. When we realize that we've done something that isn't necessarily in our kids' best interests, sometimes we feel so much guilt and so much anxiety that we either overcorrect or we kind of get stuck and paralyzed as we try to analyze what we've done and work out, well, where do I go next? What am I supposed to do? And I just want to emphasize what you've said and highlight this isn't an emergency. This isn't a cause to doubt yourself, feel guilty, or think that the world is crashing in, nor is it a need. There's no need to bring in outside help. We can work on this in really healthy, productive ways. And I love your second point. I love this second point that much of this, let's be honest, much of Paulina's email is about we are trying to get things done expediently. We're trying to get things done efficiently. We just need our 4-year-old to listen and
2-year-old,
do.
3-year-old, 4-year-old. They don't do anything fast. Usually their goal is to look at every conceivable perspective.
I remember one time
they walk around the room.
we were leaving swimming lessons, and one of our kids was walking beside me. And I've got a photo of this on my phone. As we were walking out of the swimming lessons, she stopped because she was 3 years old, and there were some flowers beside the footpath moving from the swimming lessons to the car park. And she was putting her face into the flowers. She was trying to smell these flowers. And I literally said, without thinking, it was not like I was trying to be cheeky and smart, which is unusual for me. Normally I am trying to be cheeky and smart. But I literally looked at her and said, "We don't have time for you to stop and smell those flowers." And as I said it, I realized as it was coming out of my mouth what I was saying. And that's when I stopped and took a photo of it as a reminder for me that, oh my goodness, kids are exploring the world. And we've got a bit of a challenge here, because while kids are designed to explore and slow down and smell the flowers, boys have been shown, for decades now we've known this, boys do respond to competitive prompts and impulses a lot more than girls do. And so what's happened with Paulina's experience with her son is, we're in a hurry. I need to be efficient. I know that you want to do things your way, but let's turn it into a competition. And that pervasive pattern has actually started to restructure the way he approaches all of these other tasks. But it's normal and natural for boys to be competitive, and it's also normal and natural for parents to be saying, hurry up. I guess my point here, though, is to a child lover spelt TIME.
But it's also normal for a 4-year-old to struggle with his emotional regulation.
Oh, and to use his body way too much in unhelpful ways.
To expect that he wouldn't is counterintuitive to childhood and growing up.
Yeah, so we've actually got a perfect confluence of factors in terms of mum needing stuff done and a little boy who wants to please mum, wants to use his body, wants to be active, loves competition. It's the perfect recipe for where we are with this email. But there's a whole lot of things that we can do. And I think that now that we've talked about the developmental reality, the gender reality, and the life reality of having to get stuff done, I think we should talk about some solutions to help Paulina. In terms of finding those solutions, Kylie, while I've got the PhD in psychology, your background and your training is in early childcare. And we're talking about a 4-year-old. This is your wheelhouse. I really want to hand this to you and hear your ideas about how we can maintain the fun, build the relationship, but slow life down a little bit for this 4-year-old who is getting maybe a little bit over-competitive.
I just love that she's already got everything she needs right there. She understands and recognizes that sometimes for a 4-year-old, life can be pretty boring. So let's make this fun, but we can change it up. It doesn't always have to be competitive, and it doesn't always have to have such a rushed feel to it. So on the times when we have the capacity, let's see if we can walk as slow as a snail. Can you inch like a caterpillar all the way to the dining table? You know, are you going to gently flutter all the way to bed tonight? Jump like a kangaroo if you've got the space and the energy. Like, you can literally take what she's doing, but just change it up. It doesn't always have to be fast. Find ways that you can interact with him in such a way that it's still fun and he's still going to get the job done, but recognizing and understanding that everything doesn't have to be done at cheetah speed.
What you're doing here, Kylie, is you're suggesting that Paulina engages more in relationship. And with a 4-year-old, I mean, this works so well. Any child under about 5 or 6, you can do this comfortably with, and they're not going to care what anyone else thinks. They will actually get on the ground and slide like a caterpillar. They get to be the child. They still get to expend their energy and have fun, but they're doing it in creative ways, and we're literally slowing it down. I feel like we need to just replay something that Chris and Philippa, our slow parents, had to say when they were on parental guidance over the last couple of weeks. I mean, they've really dialed this in.
Slow parenting for us is just being really intentional about getting rid of the craziness in our schedule.
What should we make?
Muddy pies.
Some muddy pies. Okay. think one of the best parts is allowing them to enjoy their childhood and learn and play rather than instructing them constantly from school and then after school activities.
One of the comments that came out of the show in relation to the slow parents was maybe they weren't setting their kids up for real life because life is intense and it's
There's
fast-paced.
so much to do. Yeah, we can't always live in slow motion.
And I found that so counter to what they were actually literally watching. Here are two adults who've been so intentional about going against the grain and slowing things down on purpose.
Yes.
And they're doing it. So this idea that we have to stay in the rat race and that our kids are just going to have to come along with us is actually not true. We can do this. It's all about prioritizing and working out what is important to us as a family, and helping our kids to slow down long term is going to make such a difference to their well-being.
I feel like this is actually a conversation that you and I need to have.
Maybe.
About how fast-paced
You live life.
we need to, as parents, model it, is all I was going to say. Model it. Hey, you know what? I'm working on this. We're having more afternoon adventures. And anyway, this is not about me. This is about Paulina. But what I would also suggest, Paulina, is another way that you can slow it down is instead of saying, we need to hurry up and do this, I'm going to race you to the gate. Sometimes when we just explain the why, our children will get on board and are quite happy to be compliant and reasonably efficient in those moments where it's necessary for efficiency to happen. There's something powerful about explaining your reason for why it's time to get in the car. Or better yet, because sometimes 4-year-olds don't really care about your reasons, sometimes it's good to ask them if they can think of 3 reasons that we need to go and get in the car in the next 2 minutes. Like, get them to come up with the rationale, because when they're explaining why, we need to go home so we can have dinner, or we need to go home so we can see dad, or we need to go home so that we can whatever. When they're giving you the reasons, they're much more likely to be compliant. Like, they'll be like, oh yeah, actually I'm buying into this now. These are my reasons, not my parents' reasons. So I would focus on rationales, and especially helping your little guy to identify for himself what those reasons are.
One last point from me.
Yeah.
In relation to helping us to slow things down, routine is so important. If we have routine, then we actually have the capacity to see where there's wriggle room to slow things down. And that provides us with the structure and the framework to create the space we need. And one of the things that we can do that works really, really well with kids to help slow that down is to introduce transitions into that routine and structure. So if we know that the kids have got to go to bed in the next half an hour, what is an activity that we could do that transitions them from, I guess, the dinner table to the bedroom? Once we work out what that is, in this instance, it might be we're going to go brush our teeth and then we're going to read a story. We're going to calm everything down. Story time becomes the transition from active movement at the dinner table to sleeping time in bed. And you can do that throughout your day in every scenario. And if your child is used to the routine and structure, it's familiar to them, that transition activity actually helps them to calm down into the next activity much easier than telling them we've got to go in 2 minutes.
Yeah. The transition is so vital to making this work, and that kind of plays in with the rationale idea. I want to go on a tangent. You mentioned before wriggle room, or did you say wiggle room? Because when you said it, I wondered if we're talking about, like, is there a difference between wriggle room and wiggle room?
Are you giving me a hard time?
No.
I don't even know what I said.
Well, you said wiggle or wriggle. I can't remember what it was. And JR can probably tell us.
If we have routine, then we actually have the capacity to see where there's wriggle room to slow things down.
Regardless, as you were talking about transitions, it made me think, is there a difference between wriggling and wiggling? And so I Googled it. When you wriggle, you twist, turn, or bend as you move. When you wiggle, you make more of a back and forth motion. So my question is it wiggle room or wriggle room?
It's wriggle.
Okay. My last point. I'm so sorry, Paulina. I just had to ask. I mean, my brain goes to these places. I want to emphasize that it's okay to do the things that you're doing.
100%. It's just not every time.
Yeah, it's just about making sure that this is not a recurring pattern.
There is a time to do things fast. There is a time to kind of, get out the door quickly. But we need to save that tactic for those times when it's needed.
Yeah, and minimising it is definitely going to be advantageous, is essentially the main point that I wanted to make. Just keep doing what you're doing, though. Slow things down. Those breathing techniques, the squeezing the pillows, the activities that Kylie's mentioned at the beginning of this conversation in terms of can you walk as slow as a snail, allowing him...
Eat your dinner like a sloth.
Allowing him to stop and smell the flowers, literally. Those kinds of things will help you to, over time, undo this pattern. But remember, it's taken a couple of years for this pattern to be created. So you're not going to undo a pattern like this in a couple of days, weeks, or even months. This is going to be a long-term process as you are intentional about the way that you're raising your kids. Really hope this has been a helpful Q&A for you. Thank you so much for your email, Pauline, at podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. That's podcasts with an S at happyfamilies.com.au. And thank you to Justin Rulon, our producer, for...
making us sound good?
And removing take 2 and take 3 and take 4 from everything that we do as we try to fluff our way through these podcasts. Also, a big thank you to Craig Bruce, our executive producer. And if you'd like more information about making your family happier, visit happyfamilies.com.au or our Facebook page, Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families.